Hey guys, if you like my content, hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really helps me out. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Esports Money, ZSM, Mac 10, whatever you want to call me, and welcome to my guide to jungling Timbersaw in patch 7.06F. First of all, if you searched how to jungle Timbersaw, I'm judging you, but this does kind of work. The reason that Timbersaw is kind of an jungler is kind of the reason that I find Axe to be kind of an jungler. He's actually pretty decent at it. The problem is he wins lanes very, very well, and he's a hero that likes to snowball, and if you're jungling, you can't really snowball. So there's two ways to look at this guide. I can swing up a bottle by about 5 minutes and be relatively tanky, or I can spend a full 10 minutes in the jungle, and just for the sake of demonstration, this video will demonstrate probably the whole 10 minutes. I haven't really decided yet. I'm voicing over this as I'm watching it. So, a few things about Timbersaw jungling. So, you're going to get your passive at level 1, and the reason being because Timbersaw's abilities all do pure damage if you use them correctly, however they all destroy trees. And if you're jungling a melee hero that's a non-traditional jungler, then you need trees to a certain extent because you need these choke points. Once you get a second point into your passive, and now I know half the viewers just stop watching, but that's part of what I do anyway, because it's the safest thing to do. Once you have 2 points in your passive, you can start spamming your abilities out and destroying trees because you don't care anymore, because you don't need to choke point. Once you have a stout shield and 2 points in your passive, you're next to impossible to kill. So, as far as skill build goes, at level 1, I get the passive. At level 2, I get your hook, your Timber Chain, and the reason that I get Timber Chain is because first of all, it's pretty good damage, and the mana cost is 70 at all levels. Or, actually no, the mana cost of that scales. Wait, getting confused here. Hold on one second. But the reason that I get the ability is first and foremost because it gives you an escape. So it does scale at all. So it goes up in mana cost per level. It's also got a 4-second cooldown, so it's nice to deal AoE damage. And remember, it's pure damage, so it is pretty significant despite the fact that it says it only does 100 damage. Another thing that I like about the ability is it's an escape. So at level 1 it doesn't have that much range, at level 2 is not that much better. It kind of scales linearly in terms of putting more points into it. It's weird because even though you get 800 range at level 1 and 1000 range at level 2, that range is it's kind of good, like it's a value point to that extent, but the 1400 range at level 4 is a much bigger difference than the 800 range at level 1. That being said, it is still the closest thing to an escape you have, and if you have a stout shield and you're jungling, then you're going to maintain close to a full 10 stacks of your passive reactive armor on the entire time, so you're going to be pretty darn hard to kill anyway. In truth, you can get away with a slightly faster jungle if you only have 1 point in reactive armor, but I strongly recommend having 2 because then A, you don't have to worry about it at all, and B, you are much harder to kill if someone decides to gank you. Now, hitting your stacks is very important with Timbersaw, especially once you hit level 3, because once you have 2 points in reactive armor, the Iron Talon, and your Timber Chain, or in your stout shield, you're very, very, very hard to kill. I've got a decent amount of armor for a hero, decent amount of base armor because I have the Timber Chain, or because I have the passive, but I also get +2 from the Iron Talon, and I have the Stout Shield, which is a nice damage block, and then I have the crazy regen from 2 points in your passive. So the weakest part of this build is 2 points in your passive. As far as your skill build beyond getting 2 points in reactive armor by level 3 is concerned, it's largely up to you, and the speed at which your jungle will occur may be vastly faster than mine. I only practiced this for a few hours, and I noticed that it worked. Surprisingly, I kind of did it out on a whim and didn't expect it to be viable to any extent. But anyway, as you can see, at about 5 minutes, I've got my bottle, and it's not too much longer after that I have brown boots. However, if you stay in the jungle a bit longer, you can get even more items, which, well, that's kind of a pointless statement because it applies to all heroes, but you get the idea. If you stay in the jungle till about 10 minutes, you can expect to have brown boots, a soul ring, wind lace, bottle, stout shield, and Iron Talon. So the Iron Talon is kind of useful for you to be able to jungle with later into the game, into the mid-game, until you have enough mana to actually just kill all the creeps with your abilities. The bottle is really good on Timbersaw, like it's good on a handful of junglers, if you can reliably grab the bounty rune, which you can because you're very tanky because you're Timbersaw. So you grab the bounty rune, and then you have mana to spam out your abilities. Another thing I want to emphasize here is be sure to use your Iron Talon on the largest creep before you use any of your abilities, because remember, Iron Talon is a percent-based overall spell. So it's percent of an enemy's current hit points. So for example, if you use it, and if you use your Timber Chain and then use the Iron Talon, you're doing, what is it, like 40%? I think it's 40% of their maximum hit points, or 40% of their current hit points, which are now lower, which means you're doing overall lower damage. It's another reason why you'll see me right-clicking weaker creeps, or smaller creeps, or creeps with a lower amount of maximum HP, before I Iron Talon the big one, and then switch my targeting over to the big one, and hold my spells for the same reason, for the best efficiency possible. Another thing is, Timbersaw's Q does pure damage, but it only does pure damage if you cut down a tree with it. So you need to be sure that if you're going to use that for a big AoE nuke, that you use it near a tree. That being said, his Timber Chain ability always does pure damage. However, it has to latch onto something in order to take effect. It's a pretty good ability. It'll allow you to jump up to the high ground, so like if I'm jungling down here where I currently am, and I shoot the Timber Chain up to a tree, then I'm good. I'm safe. I can use this to move up and down cliffs, which is one of the reasons that the level 1 Timber Chain is a pretty good value point, because if someone comes down there to gank me and I can't see them, I can Timber Chain up to the high ground to the right. Same is true here, same exact direction to Timber Chain, and in the process of doing so, I don't just get that 800 distance, but I also get to move to high ground. So thank you guys for watching. I'm getting close to the end of this guide. However, if you would like to stick around, I'm going to talk for at least a couple minutes about various Timbersaw-y things, some tips and tricks in the game as per is becoming the standard with my jungling guides. I'm also going to probably continue the background music. I'm going to play around with Invincible a little bit more. What do you guys? Let me know what you guys think about bringing back the retro music, and I'll see you in a moment. Hey guys, and we're back. So first things first, let's put in WTF and do gold 1000 and do level up 25. Is that level 25? Level up 25. There we go. Okay. So a few things to consider about Timbersaw when you're playing Timbersaw. So as far as his talents are going to go, you've already, if you're following this jungling guide especially, you've already invested in an extra point in reactive armor. So 150 health, though it is nice because of the fact that, again, we see he only has 1600 base hit points at level 25 with no items. 150 hit points might be tempting, especially because you know you have the regen to build it up. But notice that he also has, like, your duration is pretty high. At maximum level, you have 1.6 times 2, so you have 32 regen for 19 seconds as your max. So that's a lot of regen, and you also have 32 armor, which is a huge amount of armor. Like, you're very tanky to begin with. The 150 health doesn't really make it that big of a difference, and experience gain is by far and away to go. Like, I'm pretty much going to tell you this constantly. For this purpose, you can consider getting a Midas on this hero, but to rush to this level, but I would strongly recommend against it because Timbersaw is a hero that really likes to get kills. As far as this talent is concerned, it's largely up to you, but again, I'm going to have to recommend using getting the intelligence talent. Why? We've already been over that you have sick regen to begin with, so it's entirely up to you. Or it's not entirely up to you on which is the better choice. It will depend on the situation, but almost always I'm going to advise you to get the intelligence. 5% spell amplification versus 150's cast range. So this is a rather interesting one, because Octarine Core and Ags are both items that I like on Timbersaw. However, I also really like getting the Aether Lens. Let's see if we can find Aether Lens, because Aether Lens increases cast range as well, which is very, very nice for this hero. So it's plus 6% spell damage and increases spell and item cast range by 220. So it's a better version of both of these items, and it's relatively cheap. I don't know how early or late I would get this item, but it's definitely something that I want to have in my inventory. Generally speaking, I would say the cast range is the better of these two options, assuming that you don't have an Aether Lens. But if you do have an Aether Lens, it's up to you. And here's why. So, let's say I'm going to throw this guy out, and it's over here, and pull it back. And if I buy the Aether Lens, oh, I don't have Secret Chop in range. But if I get the cast range, it's a noticeable increase, but you need to play the hero a lot, and you need to be aware of how far the cast range is on Chakram, because it's like getting it's like getting a Dragon Lance on Sniper. You are so far away, and especially with Sniper, because your aggro range is shorter than your attack range, that you actually won't realize that that you can throw it that far. So like everyone basically right-clicks up and then throws it out. You might assume that the maximum distance you can throw it is like here or something. So, like if that's normally your maximum distance and now it's over here, your habit is probably going to be to walk closer than you need to be. So if you're aware, if you're good, if you're paying attention, then I would say absolutely get the cast range and the Aether Lens for the sick double cast range on the Aghanim's Chakram. Now, assuming this is a very late game, or you're falling out of control or whatever, but I would say you still should go for the cast range combined with the Aether Lens. Now, if you don't think you're going to remember your cast range, then go ahead and get the Spell Amp. Or if you are for sure not going to be buying the Aether Lens, then definitely go for the cast range. As far as the final talent, plus 20%, or plus 20 strength, or plus 6% Whirling Death loss. Again, this one's kind of up to you, but think about it this way. Timbersaw is a hero that, if you have Octarine Core, you're getting even more life back. You're going to have even more regen than usual because you have the Spell Lifesteal, which works with Chakram and Whirling Death and Timber Chain and all these other abilities. You're probably going to have Aghanim Scepter, and if you're level 25, then you might also have either a Bloodstone or a Shiva's. So if you have the Shiva's, you have 15 armor, and people have reduced attack speed against you, plus you have ridiculous amounts of armor and regen anyway. And then Bloodstone also gives you 9 HP regen and crazy health, and you can suicide, and Bloodstone's a very popular item. So for these reasons, the strength isn't as appealing as it should be. Even though the Whirling Death plus 6% isn't that crazy, like it's good, I say in almost all situations you should be going for the plus 6% Whirling Death attribute reduction, because even though you're a strength hero, you don't do any damage with your right click, so the strength is literally just for health and regen, and based on the way that you typically build this hero, you're going to have lots of health and regen anyway. As far as items go, I've kind of touched on them a lot already, but Arcane Boots Soul Ring Bottle early game's pretty good, especially with a Stout Shield on top of it. Then you can disassemble the Arcane Boots to make that into a Bloodstone at some point, or to make it into the Octarine Core, which is freaking awesome, and Aghanim Scepter should also be on your list. I would say of these four, if I had to pick three, I would not get the Shivas, I would get everything else. And then I would also want to get an Aether Lens. My ideal 6-slotted Timbersaw would be these 4 items, plus Boots of Travel, plus Aether Lens. You can substitute Aether Lens out for something like a Yols if you need it, or something like a Blink Dagger if you need it. Blink Dagger is a very good item and a very popular item on this hero, but hey, it's not the be-all, end-all, and if you have the Aether Lens, then your range is so long on Chakram, and you can close the distance so quickly with Timber Chain because it's only got a 3-second cooldown, and it has 1450 range, plus 220, so that brings it up to 1670, plus another 150 brings it up to about 1800, 1670 plus, yeah, it'd be 1820 range. So that's really, really, really far. So real quick, for the sake of demonstration, I am going to I'm going to buy an Aether Lens just to show you guys how far this actually is. And get a Blink Dagger in the process. So, and get this guy. So now we have, this is how far my range is. this is how far the cast range is. Like, it's farther than you can see. Almost. It's like the length of my screen.
Your bottom tower is under attack.
So for that reason, and that's me catching a tree. So how far is the actual... How far is 1800 range?
Your bottom tower
It's that far. And it's pretty generous with its targeting. So I would say, if you have the Aether Lens, you don't need the Blink Dagger. It's really up to you. I think the Blink Dagger is the better of the two before you get Octarine Core, but once you have Octarine Core, you may as well go for the Aether Lens because it does give you a little bit of stats. It gives you more mana, and you always want more mana. It gives you more mana regen, which you always want. 6% spell damage is nothing to scoff at. It's a full talent point for this hero, and the range is just absurd. It's both the range and the spell amp is better than his talents. So thank you guys so much for watching. This bonus tips and tricks section lasted longer than I intended, but I hope that you find it useful. If you like this content, please don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you guys next time.